Start. Yay!
Are we
We're
here?
here.
Fantastic.
We are here. Hey,
we
welcome
are.
everyone. Welcome, Kate.
Hi. I'm so happy to be here. So happy to see your face.
Likewise. And hi everyone. Welcome to this intimate gathering in
Very
this
much.
beautiful Facebook space and in our soul-based coaching community. I'm really happy that today is the day that we get to have a chat, Kate, because we've been planning this for a little while, and now the stars are aligned, it seems.
Finally. Yeah.
Exactly. So let
Thank
me
you
just
so much for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Yeah. I think Kate is one of my new favorite people in the world, kind of like, I think that's kind of where she's
Ditto.
landed.
Ditto.
Yay. So let me tell you about her before we kind of move into all of the things. So I found out recently that she's like a modern day Michelangelo, because the painting that you see behind her is hers. She also has beautiful music. She's a jazz songwriter, singer, guitarist, award-winning, I should add. You can find her on all the Spotify, Apple Music, whatever the things are.
Yep.
All of them. And you also have like a history in high performance sports, don't you? And then also she's a coach. Yeah, change coach.
It's a bit ridiculous. Choose something.
Why?
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Just imagine if we would have told that to Michelangelo. Or maybe people did try and tell him that. I don't know.
Maybe.
But the world would not be a better place.
No, for sure.
Yeah. And so we're talking about this topic that has been bubbling up through you, isn't it? It's caught you, I think.
Yes, yeah, it has, for sure.
Yeah.
It sort of came out of, so we're talking about, I coach people, but around change and sort of pivotal moments and thresholds in their lives, leaving a job, starting a company, leaving a company, all those kinds of things, going back into the working world, creating things they want to see in the world. But I had this experience of, I sort of dropped out of my life for 5 years to take care of my mom, who got diagnosed with ovarian cancer, a very rare and aggressive form. And when that happened, I just knew that I put my guitar down, I moved home, I live in New York City, and I moved to Pennsylvania, back to my childhood home and my childhood bedroom, and put my guitar away and sort of everything else thought I was doing with my life, and walked her through that experience. And she was only given maybe at the most 2 years to live, but good fortune and good care, she stayed with us for 5 years, or close to 5 years. And it was such a privilege and an honor, and such an incredible experience to do that. I was fundamentally changed by it. And that basically, one could say, or I could say, that what I did was get my mom ready for her death. That's kind of what, yes, of course, I got her through chemo, a couple of rounds of chemo and hospice and all of that. But really, it was one long conversation about, you're gonna die from this, whether it's 1 month, 10 months, 10 years. This is going to be the thing that kills you. And so how do you want to live between now and then? Which is another way of saying, like, let's get ready for you to die. Like, what's that mean for you?
Yeah. And it's such a powerful question, isn't it? Are you ready to die?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a very, trying to find the right word. It's like everything. Like, it's a sort of mysterious question, right? Because we can't even really say what death is, like. And then it's also, the question doesn't scare me. But it's definitely a question that makes you like, you know, kind of
Pay
sit up
attention.
straight. Yeah. Sit up
Yeah.
a little straighter and sort of check in.
Yeah.
What does it do for you? Like just the question or the phrase ready to die? Like, I know
I
we've
think
connected over this is why we're talking, but like, I don't know if I remember or if I even asked you, like,
mm,
what's it
I,
do for you?
I think one of the things it does for me is that it very rapidly puts me in touch with um, the way I relate to life, and kind of the larger kind of cycle of birth, death, rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
So it really, so for what it does for me is also, it's not a question that I'm scared of. And I know that saying that now, when I'm relatively healthy and everything seems to like, it's actually reminded me of another story. I'll tell you in a moment.
Yeah.
But so for me, it's like, it feels like a very grounding and very, it puts me in the right relationship with
Mm-hmm.
all the things, with the whole of life. And it also puts me in this place. It's almost like a little, it's almost like a portal into
Mm.
that sense of, um what is the word, like essence.
Essence.
What is the essence,
Mm.
and
I
not
love
just
that
of
word.
me, but like of like the essence of all. So
Mm-hmm.
so in that sense, I love the question, and I love that you ask it. And I think it is like a fundamental, like, because that space, I think, is a very fundamental space to be at.
Yeah, and maybe the space is the part, is the point, right? Like,
Mm.
I love that you pointed, like, one of the first words out of your mouth was the word life. Because I think if you're coming to this conversation sort of unprepared or you know, if death is something that's scary to you and kind of other and way out here for
Mm.
you, I notice when I have these conversations that the word life doesn't tend to come up. But for me, it's like, you know, are you ready to die? Or are you ready to live? Like it's just like basically when you ask that question, you're asking about life, you know. So it's I love that you said that word very soon into the question, and I love the word essence. It's a beautiful word.
Yeah, me too. I think there's I think I shared in our previous conversation, I've talked a little bit about this, at different times. I talk about this in this community too, about how part of how I relate to the world is from this space as a priestess.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I don't talk about it all the time is because I feel that it's something that is very personal, and it's important for people to find their own relationship with it. So I don't want to be in a space where I'm teaching to also
Right.
kind of go, and this is what a priestess looks like. I'm like, oh, that goes against everything
Yeah,
that
that
I
doesn't
believe
feel
in.
good.
Like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
so, and it doesn't mean that I don't want to talk about it. I'm
Of
very
course.
happy to talk about it.
Mhm.
But in that space of, when we start to talk about, are you ready to die, that kind of that sense of, we often talk about being a midwife in this community, like being a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual midwife. And for me, this goes into exactly that space. It's like the, where life takes you, where life takes our clients, and that can be at death's doorstep, or
Mm-hmm.
it can be about really big changes,
Mm-hmm.
that that go right back to that essence, and go to the, and so how do I want to relate to this? What do I want, given that there's this diagnosis, or that I'm seeing this thing now pop up in my life? What is it that I truly, deeply want here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's part
Yeah,
of
I mean,
this.
it's in retrospect, it's not surprising that. my coaching world, my coaching has always been about and around change, because all change is a kind of death, right? I mean, this is
Mm,
one thing I really make sure I talk about in my TEDx talk that I gave about early on when I started talking about these things. But that, like, when we talk about loss, we can talk about the great losses of life, loss of parents, loss of children, loss of friendships, um, loss of partners. But we can also talk about the more mundane loss, mundane in air quotes, like I lost, my favorite hat, like I lost, a job. I lost my house to, something. Like those losses exist in the same kind of space too, which
yeah.
is curious, you know, and a beautiful.
Yeah, I tend to go towards the beautiful in the kind of sitting, because this is part of it, right? There's like this sitting back,
Hmm.
and kind of that's also what it does for me, that question. It's like it invites me to kind of sit back and kind of look at a bigger whole
Mm.
than just to kind of day to day, like, oh, this is like a beautiful thing. And it's like, oh, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
It kind of shifts perspective. Um, and then like loss, I think part of why I really I think this topic is so important to talk about, because as a culture we're so afraid of it, and it's like
Mm.
like it shouldn't happen. We shouldn't lose things. Like when a relationship fails, like that's a bad thing.
Mm.
Like, but at the same time, this is the stuff life is made of. It's like the cyclical, the cycle of
The
the seasons,
seasons,
right?
yeah,
It's like nothing lives forever, and just as well.
rightly
um
so. Yeah.
yeah, we're kind of coming to terms with that. I think the first time one of my, like the guy I was with for 10 years,
Mhm.
when we split up, I was convinced I was going to grow old with him.
Mhm.
um yeah, I was early, I just hit 30, I think, at that point, just a little bit before that. And
Mhm.
but that was so devastating. Like there was very little of me left, that like
Mm.
that was a huge um shift. And throughout the years there've been more and more and more losses that were big, like that had fundamental impacts on me, but also that has given me such a depth and such a um, quality of how I relate to life now that I'm almost 50. Um,
Right.
and I think that's part of the journey that we're maybe all on, but it feels like really important to me.
Yeah, it strikes me that maybe you would never have thought of yourself as a priestess without some loss.
Absolutely.
Like there might be, you can tell me or share with us if you want, but like that sort of is a fundamental part of that, perhaps, like awakening to this feeling that you have about your relation to the world and to phenomena, you know,
Yeah. Yeah,
into
exactly.
transitions.
Exactly. And I think there's this, we've all grown up in this world that is so led from the mind and from that space of like linear thought, where all growth is kind of like, it has to always go like that.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so to wake up to the fact that life in fact is not that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to find a way of being okay with that. Like, for the longest time, part of the losses in my life has been health, like living with chronic illness, um, that is seriously impacting my, how I am in the world. It
Mm-hmm.
still is. I mean, I can live really well around it and with it, but it's still, there's quite a few limitations that I live with. But it's like, when this is part of it, now what? Right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I want to relate to this phenomenon called life that has
Mm-hmm.
all these things that are not fun? that are not just good, that are not easy, that are, you know, what do we do with the things that are like we'd rather put in the basement, you know, we'd rather chuck out the window. And I think this is part of that kind of learning to embrace that. Yeah, it's part of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I mean, it's so much of it is culture and conditioning, right? Like the Western world has such a fear of death and you know has developed. Well, I don't think, yeah. I mean, I think once we sort of stopped experiencing death personally, um, you know, there's a really great book, and right now the name of it is escaping me, but it's sort of about how in America, this deaths were experienced at home, much like all the world, right? Like you didn't travel that far from your home ever. You were very home based. Everything happened in the home, and the Civil War was actually the sort of start of the modern, what we think of as like the modern mortuary kind of experience, you know, because soldiers from Maine, which is in the northern part of the United States, were fighting a battle down in, you know, the southern United States, out hundreds, you know, miles away from their home, and vice versa, and dying there. And all of a sudden that experience wasn't possible anymore, and that sort of can be seen as a starting point of this sort of separation of being separated from, you know, not actually having to experience it because it doesn't happen in front of you, or you don't see the body, or all these things, you know, that our ancestors and the way we used to live had rituals and experiences that, you know, we've sort of sanitized out of our life. And you know, people have to do what feels comfortable to them and what feels right and good to them and to the person who's died, and you know, all those things. But yeah, and so culture has so much to play in it, you know, has so much to do with how we sort of grow up and get this fear maybe instilled in us, whereas if we grew up a different way, we wouldn't necessarily fear that. I mean, also this, you know, this, we're moving away from intergenerational living, and so we're not with old bodies. One of the sweetnesses of my time with my mom was, and my dad died a year ago almost to the day. His death date is coming up next week. Is and I just loved being around old bodies. Like I'm not a squeamish person, so, and I didn't have a choice. I mean, my mom's care was very hands-on, and so was my dad's care, and it was so beautiful, you know. So I mean, it was terribly sad, but it was very beautiful to see a body, you know, lose. I mean, with my mom, I was there continuously for 5 years, so I can remember calling my partner and saying, you know, today she lost her ability to write. She's no longer writing, and my mom is a legendary letter writer and list maker. And so how poignant that was, you know, but all the little things before that, you know, like, man, it's just, so we're getting away from that with this living, so, you know, everybody's their own little bubble.
Yeah. Yeah, and probably even more so after having the COVID affairs happening. Yeah. Actually, what you were sharing is my when I was thinking about the way my granddad passed.
Yeah, tell me.
There's because I think we probably have stories like between, not just you and me, but like between us, everyone who's listening, and just having appreciation like for the experience and the stories, I think is one way in which we can maybe reclaim some of that wholeness that I think is to be found here. So I had a really special relationship with my grandfather, and I just always felt so happy that he was, who he was, and that he was in my life.
Mm,
Um, I don't know, something about him that was really inspiring and solid. And
mm.
he
What
led
was his
a,
name?
well,
Or what did you call him?
Obayur. He was called by the name of his dog.
Mm,
Just the
okay.
way you do.
Yeah, totally.
And so he'd lived a very rich life with lots of different experiences, including
Mm.
being a prisoner of war in Japan in the Second World War, and like
Oh.
big stuff, and big shifts. And not handling everything with grace and ease. He was not an easeful dad to have, but he was really, like, for me, there was like a real special connection that we had. And
Mm,
so I remember I was away on holiday by myself, first time, after that splitting up that I
mhm,
spoke about earlier. And so I was in Greece,
mm,
tiny island, and I all of a sudden got a call. And this was like a pretty special place. That was like a spiritual community kind of holiday
mhm,
type thing. And I got a call that the whole family was together at his birth in the hospital because things weren't looking good. So I got together. There was no point in me coming back. Like, it
right.
was like there was
Just no
no,
way. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm,
But what I did was I called on a few of the people that I'd connected with, and we had
mm,
a beautiful ritual to honor him and the journey that he was on. And so I remember one of the songs that we sang
mm.
was "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot." It was one of the, I don't know why it came up, it just came
Yeah,
up.
just did. Yeah.
And so it was a really beautiful way of being in that space of transition and just kind of feeling my grief
Mm,
around this process. And then actually he didn't die, so I had a chance to, when I got back, he kind of pulled through, and he talked to me about what had happened, and we had a conversation about this. And he said,
wow.
the weirdest thing happened. As I was in this space, I found myself in this chariot, and there was someone riding the chariot. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. I
Yeah,
haven't
me
told
too.
this for a long time. And the guy, doing the horse things,
Yeah.
he was like, "It's not your time yet. I'm taking you back." And so that was just like, we were both kind of like, I hadn't told him about this song, but I was like,
Right.
we.
Can I share with you? Yeah, yeah. Wow.
So that was just, it's like, I don't know, it was
Right.
so incredible. So,
Hmm.
like, who knows what happens, right, in that portal of like that? Who knows? But there's a real having the opportunity to talk to him,
Mm.
then, but also later on, about what this was like for him, because he went on to live for a couple more years.
Wow.
Um, yeah. Lost a
Amazing.
leg at some point, and
Hmm.
all sorts of things happen. But it's like being able to be in conversation about that is
I,
such a fulfilling thing.
oh man, I mean, what an experience, right? What a gift. What a gift. And I'm sure you were, what a gift to you, right? But I'm sure you were a gift to him in the ability to have someone who could hold space for that conversation, right? You know, um, and those conversations too. I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing that amazing story. It was so beautiful and remarkable, like a life moment, of all life moments. Like that one
Mhm.
sounds like it's up there. um, yeah, it's like I have two older brothers and they were around and helpful, but you know, being able to return to that kind of question with my mom over and over again, kind of just like you're turning a book that you put down and and oh, I forgot. Just before we got on the call, I picked up a book I'd started reading and I forgot. And it's sort of like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to turn this page and then I'm going to go back to the place. Like I felt like we were just sort of we kept turning over the pages of this book called, Ready to Die, and then we'd put it down and get like super into the weeds about like, oh, like, she can't eat anything. Like, how do I figure out how to make her food that she can stomach, you know, and then there would be like a space in a weird time, you know, like a yeah, on a drive to the chemo suite, and I'd be like, well, you know, have you thought more about like where do you think you're going to die? Like where do you think you're going once you die? Like I'm curious. But we could pick up these threads. Now I'm changing the metaphors, but we could pick up the thread um, over and over again because I was there, like day in and day out, which was such a gift. And I learned to do it with my dad. You know, I sort of got the confidence of that from that to be able to do it with my dad, who I wasn't as involved in the day to day. I was around a lot because I'm his only daughter, and he was a musician, so we had a sort of special, different relationship than my brothers. But my brothers stepped up to be the primary caregivers. So, but even though I didn't have as much time with him, I felt comfortable to ask him those questions, which, you know, sort of the gift of the time I had with my mom.
Mm.
But you were such a gift to him, I bet, you know, without him saying it, just to be a person who could have that conversation.
Yeah, I felt like a really, it's like we talk about holding space in this community a lot, and so it feels like there's this part of my brain is going to say this ultimate possibility to hold space, but like that sounds like it's like a
Right.
know
Yeah.
it's not, but it's like it is such an incredibly nourishing space to be in anyway, but to
Right.
be there with someone who is in that space of touching the transition is like yeah, it's like it's alchemy. It's like it's without any expectation, right, of what's gonna happen. And it's just it brought back another memory of my husband's granddad. When he was in hospice, I hadn't known him for very long, but we went to see him and we just sat at his bed and he was just kind of really drifting off, and I was doing a little bit of really soft reiki, just kind of like the windows, the curtains were closed, and it was like and there was this kind of thing going on about, well, is he ready to let go yet? Like I was really holding on, and I was just kind of infusing some softness into that, just kind of like some breathing space into the exploration rather than a go, go now.
Right.
But more of a, and then at some point, my husband's aunt came in and she was like, hey, hello, open up the curtains. How are you today, Dad? And I was like, okay.
Right. And then now we transition to a different feeling.
I'm gonna bow out now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and obviously it was totally her, it's her relationship with her dad. It's all all good.
Beautiful. It's fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
absolutely
It's all okay.
good. So it's no judgment, but it's just the contrast of the space and the energy was very, very, very big.
Totally.
And yeah. Hey, Kate, how would you say that the time with your mom and like everything that's happened in that space, how has it affected the way that you show up with your clients now?
I mean, you know, it was such a fundamental change for me. I think it's part of everything I do with everybody, whether or it's part of my being with everybody. Um, you know, I don't have a program. I mean, we go where the client wants to go. It's very bespoke in that way. But I think there isn't a time when I'm talking to someone where I'm not curious about, you know, where are they with this question? You know, how are they? You so beautifully use the words letting go. Um, you know, how tightly are they holding on to either the thing we're talking about or like just in general, you know? And is there a space for me to offer, you know, something, maybe if we talked a little bit about your mortality, you wouldn't maybe be so, you wouldn't be gripping so hard. It's, it's like, I feel like it's always there for me. I'm always thinking about it and always in touch with it, even when we never go there. Um, but certainly it's an arrow in my quiver, um, in many ways, from the very practical, like if we're talking about it, like, hey, let's just get some practical stuff sorted out. Like, who knows the passwords to your computer and your phone? Like, if there's one piece of advice I could give everybody about being ready to die,
Yep.
it would be make sure someone has the password to your phone and to your computer. And obviously it would be a kindness to the people left behind if they had all the other passwords as well. But those two in particular, in the moments after, the days and weeks and months after someone dies, you do not want to be dealing with this. This is not where you want your energy and your spirit and your soul to be.
No.
So that's my, like, down and dirty, like, just
Yeah.
write it down and tape it up into the back of, a cabinet and tell your partner or your kids or somebody that it's there.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's very practical stuff like that. Like, do you have a will? Or is as nitty gritty as, like, do you want to plan your memorial service?
Mm.
Let's do it. Or do you want to, who are the people in the world that you want to make sure know how much they've, influenced and inspired you? Because that was a big part of what I did with my mom, was made sure that she knew that she got to feel the love from the people whom she affected, which was hard. She was a very, like, self-deprecating person, and it took a while for her to really, it was overwhelming because she was such a rock in so many ways in our family, in the community, etc., that the second everybody heard about this fatal disease, the love force field beam was so intense, rightly so, like, not a surprise. And for her, I think she had just always been like, oh yeah, but I still gotta, oh yeah, the kids, oh yeah, the family, like, very, very not a person who let that stuff in. And so it was a lot of me, getting her to look at that, getting her to accept that, getting her to let little bits of it in slowly, slowly, and then vice versa. Like, who, mom, do you need to say something to?
Yeah.
And then making sure that was done.
And I think this is like, I sometimes everyone just follow Kate on, like, Facebook, or just sign up for stuff. But
Yeah.
like some of the things that you're sharing and putting out, like, there's such good questions. Like, even that, that question of, like, who would you want to know has, like, inspired you, whatever affected you in like ways that are really important to you. And it's like, let them know about it.
Yeah.
Now.
Exactly. Yeah. It's such a gift.
Yeah. I think that question of, are you ready to die? I think that's why it's so powerful, because it brings us in touch with that portal. That one truth that we have in our lives is that we are going to die, all of us, at some point, and just kind of feel there's such depth and connection and such love and appreciation, and all of that is there, and we can tap into that now. There's no reason to wait.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously I was helping my mom do this, so I had to do it myself. And so, I made a list of all the people that mattered to me, that I needed to tell them how much they mattered to me. And then over the course of the year or two after my mom died, I'm a big letter writer as well. And I just, hand wrote them letters and I just was very candid and said, look, you all know, for the most part, all of them knew that what I had been going through. So it just said, on the occasion of what I just did with my mom, and I need to tell you, I'm sort of getting myself ready to die as well, and I need to tell you some things so that it's there. And I fully expect we'll have a great long relationship with each other, and I can't wait for more of it. And just in case we don't, for some reason or another,
I want
I
you
need
to
you to
know.
know this. Yeah, I need you
Yeah.
to know this. And I let them off the hook and just said, you don't need to do with this what you will. Like, if you feel like acknowledging it, great. If you feel like it's uncomfortable and sort of, makes you bashful or something, great. If you want to talk more about like why it is I feel that way, or like reminisce about, the friendship or whatever, I'm down for that too. So I think that was sort of another key part, is just like, because you don't know where your letter's gonna find people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, when you talk about it, it feels like a real offering of love, like a real, it's like placing it on the altar of the relationship.
right.
That's kind of like, yeah, in
Yeah.
service of the whole.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and like I didn't need a response. It wasn't about them. It was about me saying what I needed to say so that I could shuffle off this mortal coil being as whole as possible.
yeah, beautiful.
So, yeah.
Mm. It's
Yeah.
really yummy. Yeah, it's like a
Yeah. Well, you're a mom, right?
mm,
I'm not a mom. Um, but in the conversations I've had with people, there's also, you know, people have spoken about how that experience of becoming a parent um, really shifts their relationship to mortality.
yeah, and also on a very fundamental level. Especially, I talked, like I hinted at this at the beginning of this conversation, but there's, as much as I say that I feel that I'm not scared of death,
Mm,
in the same way, I'm very aware that I'm not at death's doorstep right
right.
now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just reminded me of when I was preparing to give birth, and how at some point I just tapped into this really embodied, deeply felt sense of like, women have been doing this for hundreds and thousands of years. There's like a knowing in my system.
Mm.
And that really kind of calmed me down. And then the actual birthing experience was pretty horrific, you know. And there's a part of me that was, actually, I asked my mom, I said to my mom later, why the did you not tell me about this? It's like, but like, and the reason I'm saying this now is that there's there's several layers to it, but one
Yes.
of them is the, when you're going to get to that point with yourself or someone that's really close to you, there's going to be some huge emotional, and that's to be expected. Like, it's not, I don't think, I'm not afraid of that death, and
Right.
then I say I'm going to just kind of be like that, like, that's
Yeah.
not, that's kind of not my expectation.
Yeah.
um the other side of it, that for me, is that birthing experience is like an initiation into this field of where life and death are very close together. And so
Beautifully put. Yeah,
that's
that's
what
beautifully
really
put.
fundamentally changed me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, just talking about that closeness of the two is very. Um, I mean, as I said, I'm not a mom, but I can understand that. I mean, I spend a lot of time in the wilderness and doing pretty dangerous things and on mountaintops and stuff like that. And there can
Mm,
be times where you're like very aware that one slip, it's where those two, that life death is really rubbing up against each other. So I
yeah.
have my own sense of that. Of course, I don't have a sense of it in terms of childbirth, but what a beautiful, story you just shared, and that you're not the first mother I've heard who went to their mother afterwards and said,
What the fuck?
hello.
Yeah. And I think this is very similar to the way that we don't talk about death. I think
Definitely.
that like, even when what I know about the US about birthing, it's like so much of it is planned and cesareans and like all of that. It's like taking away the actual
The messiness, the
the
chaos.
yeah, which is what it is, right? That's like that is the essence of it. And it's like, to me, that's also touches on the priestessing. It's like learning to be with the messiness of it all, because that's also where there is great power, great beauty. That's where aliveness comes from, right? Even at that, like when I was sitting with my husband's granddad, like that's, it felt so alive. Like life doesn't get to be more alive for me than in these moments where, yeah, like that's just a reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that messiness is really beautiful. I mean, I loved it. Like I said, I loved being around the aging body. I loved being around, I mean, loved, I don't know if that's the word. I don't know what the word is, but I was so comfortable around the dying, when she was active, what hospice calls sort of actively dying, the last 2 weeks or so.
Mm.
Um, and then, of course, once she died, being there in the room, watching that last breath happen and staying with the body as long as I could. I mean, unfortunately, I always said, like, if I had been thinking, I thought quite ahead for a lot of my care for her. But for some reason, I didn't think ahead about. I mean, I couldn't have done this; it wouldn't have been legal in the state of Pennsylvania. But I would have, if it was possible, I would have loved to have had the opportunity to, like, actually prepare the body for cremation and light the fire and all that kind of stuff. It felt like, I almost felt like my experience, like, not, I don't know what the word I want to use is, like, wasn't complete because I couldn't do that. And of course, I live in the state I live in, I live in the country I live in, my mom wouldn't have wanted to move to Oregon or wherever it is you can do that, Washington State or something like that. We weren't going to do that, but I would have loved that opportunity. And that's exactly what you're speaking of, that messiness, that real up close, in touch with what it actually means, like no mystery, or lots of mystery. I don't know. It's like, so tons of mystery, but the thing is right there. Yeah,
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 yeah, exactly.
yeah.
It is actually, for me, it's like being in the mystery
Yes,
rather
yeah.
than kind of pretending it's not
Well put. Well
there.
put.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, thank you, Kate. Like, this is so much, this is touching on like such, I think it's one of the ways that one of the reasons I really love hanging out with you is that when we can touch on this, like this layer, this part of being, that there is I guess when I speak for myself, there's like a groundedness and a calmness, but also like a very deep appreciation for what is here and now. And that makes everything just more, I don't know, it's like the metaphor that's coming up is like there's this how from black and white TV to color TV,
Yeah.
and then kind of like an enhanced version of color TV that doesn't
Yeah,
get to
yeah.
be too much for the senses, but that, like, it's a little bit like that. It's like it opens up so much more.
Yeah, this, what I get a sense of is, like, it's going from monochromatic to technicolor to, like, I don't know, 3D, or like some, I mean, 3D, but, like, yeah, there's a richness. I think you used that word earlier. There's a richness if you can stay in the space and you can just not react, you know. You can just be there and get curious, or just watch, or just be. I mean, that's the gift, right? Like, that's the gift you gave your grandfather. That's the ultimately the gift I gave my mom, is that I was just able to be there through it all.
Yeah.
You know, just show up with no agenda and no, you know, as quiet of a heart as you can have, and just because they're the ones who are losing everything, actually, you
Yeah.
know. And just being able to be there and be okay with it is like, you don't have to do anything more than that. You really don't. And that's the rub. Everyone always wants to do something, and it's like, what you can do is not do, just be.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a big part of what we do in soul-based coaching and the skills that we teach our coaches.
Nice.
It's the background noise of the sirens in New York. It's like
It's happening
very,
all around me. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's one of the reasons I love New York, and I live in a pretty gritty part of New York, and it's around me, you know. We have a lot of homeless, and we have people whose lives are on that, unfortunately, in that margin, that close space. And you know, I obviously would not wish that on anybody, but it's, if one can move through it and see, oh yeah, this is my teacher, you know, this is my teacher, this, what I'm seeing here, how can I first work to not have it be so, and also how can I let it inform me that, you know, there's, there but for the grace of God go I, you know, like, that person could be me, that person's someone's daughter, that person's someone's mother, that person's someone's aunt,
Mm,
you know, who's living in a bus shelter on the street and I pass every day. Like, that
yeah.
person meant something to someone at some point, and probably still does, but, you know, so yeah, it is appropriate that the sirens are going off.
It gives us this taste of the messiness and the real, and it's not just we're not just talking hypotheticals, right? We're actually talking about that. Well, yeah,
It's happening
this
all around
happens.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing
Yeah.
I wanted to just put a pin in is you use the phrase "ready to let go," and I just want to thank you for that, because it I had this calling, and you know, obviously it was essentially a calling when my mom got sick, and I didn't even think twice. I just sprung into action and moved home. Um, and then after the experience, I came out of it, and you know, I did the TED talk. I made this record that's all this music about this time with my mom, and you know, obviously this is something I'm really want to talk about and want to open up the conversation around. And people were like, "So you want to be like a grief coach or like a grief therapist?" And I'm like, no, like, that's not actually, I mean, yes, I'll talk about that. I'll go there with you if you want, but that's not, or like, okay, so do you want to be a death doula? And I'm like, no, not really. That's not really it. And then, you know, in this program we were in together, how we met, I was in a conversation, and it suddenly became clear to me that's like, oh, it's about being ready to die. That's the language that most captures it. But what I want to thank you for is saying ready to let go, because it's just a beautiful way to say the same thing without saying the word die. Because what I've come to know as I've done more of this coaching and guiding people to be ready to die is that some people, they're afraid, and I didn't mean to laugh, but I'm laughing because it just didn't occur to me. And until somebody told this to me, this was totally a complete blind spot for me. They're afraid if they say the words ready to die, they are somehow calling their death to them. They're somehow making it a reality, like they're bringing it closer to them.
Mm,
Which never occurred to me, because that was never my experience. I've always been okay with death. Like, even before my mom got sick, for some reason, I had always been okay with it. And so I just want to thank you for the words ready to let go, because maybe that's a way in, because I still don't really know how to like what to say to a person who says, you know, I'd love to do this work with you. Like, I know I need to do this work. I'm called to do this work with you. And if I do it, I'm afraid I'm going to make my death kind of, I'm going to be calling it to me as well.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that emerge as we're
Yeah.
in this connection space. Then
yeah, but it's just a really great way of saying the same thing with a little softer edge and a little like, we can talk about letting go, because we let go of things all the time. You know, I put a letter into the mailbox, I let it go. It may get to you, it may not. You know, we can kind of draw the parallels and the metaphors. So, yeah.
I look forward to seeing what's going to unfold, Kate. So
thank you. Well, you know, thank you so much for allowing me to talk about it. There's, yeah, it's just, it feels like a huge gift. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being willing to have the conversation. It feels like a huge gift. So how cool is that?
Yeah,
so everyone watching, thank you for hanging out with us. And if you want to find Kate, go to Kate.
I'll give the rundown. How about, is that okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. You can find my music at kateschutt.com. You can listen to a lot of it there, but as Annemiek said, there's a lot everywhere, YouTube, everywhere you get your music. My coaching is at incandescentcoaching.com. Don't be surprised if you go there though, and there's no mention of being ready to die, because it's I'm changing and I'm shifting, and the website hasn't caught up to me yet. And you can contact me through both of those websites. And I'm on the socials at Kate Schutt, so KateSchutt.
Right.
I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, wonderful. And of course, we'd love to hear what our conversation today is doing for you, how that question is dropping into your body, into your system. And yeah, please share. I think it's a very, you know, as coaches, I think the more that we're able to be with all of these different aspects in life, the more valuable we can be for our clients in our being, just as Kate was, you know, you were saying earlier about how this has become part of who you are. And so in that way. Thank you so much, Kate. And until we meet again, everyone, see you soon. Oh, and now I'm going to